Well, welcome everyone to Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game. I'm your host, Steve Savant, syndicated financial columnist and money color commentator. On today's show, selecting the right fiduciary, part 5 in our series on captive insurance companies, the business alternative, with author, speaker, and nationally recognized captive insurance expert, Wes Sierk. Welcome to the 5th chapter, or I should say 5th segment. You're an author.
Yes.
You wrote Taking Captive, the Secret of Capturing Your Piece of America's multi-billion dollar insurance. I love that. And when you put that out there, why did you write that? Why did you actually write that book?
There wasn't a lot on captive insurance companies. Mm-hmm. There was legal texts, which you could do, or there was a few like really flimsy, almost pamphlets at the time. This was in 2008. So I set out to write a book, Taken Captive, that was written on how captive insurance companies work from a business owner's perspective. So it lays it out for the business owners so they can understand what are all the thought processes and that go into setting them up, what they should be doing, what they should not be doing. There's chapters on what is a feasibility study. You know, these things need to be in your feasibility study or you're not dealing with somebody who knows what they're doing.
So people that are into captives, I know a lot of people like your book. They think you really have a handle on it. You're a leading expert. You're nationally recognized. So, and you also wrote another book called You Can Make It, But Can You Keep It? I mean, that's always the thing. I made the money, but now I have to surrender. I mean, last week we had one of our retirement guys in. He says, you realize you're partnering with Uncle Sam. Your $1 million retirement plan is really worth $600,000.
Yeah.
Can I keep it? Why'd you write that book?
You know, it's interesting. When I was a financial planner back in the late 90s, I was dealing with actually my wife's uncle at the time. He's retired VP from Shell. Wasn't trying to sell him anything, but we were just in a conversation and he said, you know what, I told my financial planner, if I woke up tomorrow and had twice as much money, my life wouldn't change. If I had half as much, it would. And that's something that stuck with me. And then I was thinking about, you know, that exact topic, and I'm like, you know what, this needs to be written. All the financial books out there were written about how to grow your money, not about how to keep it. You know, onshore, offshore trusts, you know, and it was really, it's the planning I did for my own personal stuff.
So actually, in the spirit of trying to keep more money, I can still, you know, captive, same thinking. You know, I want to keep more of my money. I'd like to see me participate in the insurance profitability of this.
Yes.
Okay. A fiduciary is a person, in my view, especially with the Department of Labor and all the press that's going on all over consumer content that's everywhere, we all want to pick people that are really good in their field, expert. Let's just take care of this. There are scams out there, and I'm not going to say they're not. There are, and you got to be careful. There's gamers, okay? We want to be able to just always make the difference between the real, artful experts and people who are just really cons. This is a great product, a great idea, and a great strategy for the right qualified partner. Now, we already talked about qualification in the last episode. I want you to talk to me about what am I looking for in a fiduciary and a person who's going to run this show. You are one of the top fiduciaries in the United States in this area. You have a high bar. Tell me about how high it is.
We're actually not fiduciaries for the client, surprisingly enough. We're a fiduciary for the Department of Insurance.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's a little different nomenclature.
Yeah. So we have a lot of clients, and they're in different jurisdictions. If one of our clients does something wrong with their captive insurance company, we risk losing our license to manage all of our clients.
So one bad apple could cost you the whole
exactly.
thing? So you're watching, what's your oversight like then?
Oh, it's huge. Checks and balances. If a client does something wrong, let's say that they pull out an unauthorized distribution for their company without getting the insurance commissioner's approval, we say, hey, you have to put it back. We submit the proper paperwork to the Department of Insurance. If not, we have to notify the Department of Insurance that say, hey, Steve took $1 million out of his insurance company without your or our approval. So we have to go on to them and let them know, or else we risk losing, you know, our entire business.
Wow.
Which we don't. Yeah. Which we don't. We would never let happen. So that's what I'd say. What you're looking for is from a captive manager is somebody who's going to tell you what not to do. Because too many people are just like, yeah, you can do this, you can do that. You know, we're very clear on you can do this and you can't do this.
So there's rules of engagement that have to be obeyed throughout the year.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I've noticed that you've also told me, Wes, that you've then all of a sudden some other person who has sold a captive, that person comes to you because they think something's not right or something seems to be amiss in the way they're set up. I know you've looked at this. What's it like to correct something that isn't right?
It's impossible.
It's just impossible. You have to start over?
Typically, we'd recommend them to shut down or wind down that company, and we can help them with the dissolution of that company and then start a new one that's regulated. One of the problems we have is if we take it over, then it's kind of like a defined benefit plan administrator. You take it over, you're now liable if the IRS comes in and looks at that plan, even though you weren't involved in it. So if it's completely messed up, and we have, a fair amount of those where at this point in our careers, if they're not willing to start a new one and do things right, then we'd rather not have them as a client because it's way too difficult to correct something, and it puts all that liability is now on us.
You would inherit it.
Yeah, and it's just not worth it.
Okay, so when you approach, how many people say, Wes, I hate the ability that I'm going to have to go ahead and totally unwind this thing? How many people do it? How many say no, I'm not, and they walk?
80% shut down the company and start a new one.
So most people understand they have to. Do they ever?
Because
go
they can
back?
move their capital and surplus to their new company. We can do what's called a loss portfolio transfer. So just like AIG wants to get out of insuring diamond rings, as an example, they can say, "Hey, I'm selling that risk to this company, which is now going to take that risk." So we can assume risk from the other insurance company. We'll do that loss portfolio transfer. And so that company now, the old one doesn't have any risk. It's now whatever policies are written in this one. But all the stuff that happened before, we now just compartmentalize that. It's now shuttered. And now you have a fully compliant insurance company that's run right from the beginning.
Okay, so when you are having to rehabilitate, for lack of a better word, rehabilitate a captive, if the procedures are a little tough, but it can be done. You said 80% of the people that come to you, they're willing to unwind it and start again. There's probably a little bit of cost there, but it's better than going forward. Have anybody ever went back to the original person who was crafting or was the architect of the original captive and sued these guys for whatever they did?
I don't know if they've sued them or not. We've had a few where it was so just over the top that, they should sue them.
So they had really bad advice. And it was, and some of it illegal, or maybe somewhat fraudulent.
Not illegal, but just so poorly done that I'll give you one example.
Sure.
There was a client who set up a captive insurance company. It was seemingly it's a construction company, so you think, wow, they have risk, but the policies they were writing were so insane that they're covering their tools of their workers, and they're paying $800,000 in premium. You can buy that equipment floater for, $2,000. They're in the middle of an IRS audit, and the IRS, they weren't doing risk transfer, risk distribution properly. So the IRS said, you know what, your captive isn't a legitimate captive from the beginning. So where the IRS started in that whole discussion was they disallowed the deduction for insurance because it wasn't an insurance company from that S corp. The insurance company was not a legitimate insurance company. It was a C corp that took in millions of dollars in income, but didn't get the deduction for the reserves or anything else because it wasn't. So they taxed the C corp on all that income because they didn't have the expenses against it. And then they did a constructive dividend out of that C corp back to the owners of that C corp because they had too much money in their C corp, just like a regular C corp. So at the end of the day, it was $6 million of what they paid in premium, and it was $7.2 million that they owed in penalties, taxes, and interest.
So this has to be done by people who know what they're talking about, and there is no turnkey system out there. That's what I'm getting out of this, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to buy a package on the internet, right, and just go ahead and work it myself.
That would be great if you could turnkey it, but it's just everything's bespoke.
Now, and you said that this is really customized. I mean, businesses have there's basic understanding and commonalities, but everybody's going to have this tailored.
Yes.
So you have to do a lot of R&D and data collection.
Yeah.
And when you make all that, how long is it from the day I start to the day I'm operational? What is it?
If you told me today you wanted your own captive insurance company, and we had all the data and we did the feasibility study, you're probably 6 weeks to turn on your insurance company. But usually our process is 9 months once they get introduced to the concept, and then it's tweaking it, and then we have to go through. We have to wait till their policies renew, because in many cases you're doing health insurance and comp and general liability. So we talk to you today and you say, yeah, this is great, but I just renewed my general liability. I just renewed my health March 1st. So we may have to wait until March 1st of next year for that.
Well, I want to thank Wes for sharing this series on captive insurance companies, the business alternative. And keep in mind, before moving forward with any ideas on our show, always check with your tax consultant, legal counsel, or your financial advisor. You've been watching Steve Savant's Money, the name of the game.